This is the Go Radio Business Show.
Tom,
Willie,
another week. What's glorious weather, sunshine in the Gorbals. What can we say?
we say in Glasgow it's taps off and taps off.
Brilliant. See, when you bring that up, I don't know if you've seen it. Did you see the guys for the unions this week that were going on strike for Scottish Water? And that was what they had in the big sign. Taps off.
You still got a sense of humour.
Yes. Right, talking about a sense of humour. See that the Scottish Government has announced that there'll be another 3.9 billion winging its way to CalMac to run the ferries for the next 10 years.
Right.
But interestingly, what they're saying is it'll be more like a public service model than a commercial model. So really what we're saying is we've nationalised CalMac, but we're not telling you.
Right. So just so I get it straight, CalMac are not the ones who, there's a separate body that builds or says, right, you're getting the contract for a ferry. Or
No, CalMac give the go ahead.
Right.
So the government give CalMac the money. They're the
procurer.
procurer, and so they place the orders. But what they do is they administer all the logistics of the ferries running and all of that stuff, and
I see.
maintenance and all of that, right? So they're the kind of holding company. But surely they've been a huge part of the problems that we've had with the ferries.
Well, it's this old thing, Willie. If you're in the public sector and you make a muck of it, you don't seem to be held accountable.
Yeah.
Who in the public sector has actually got the sack for the ferry fiasco?
I think they owe it to the people of Scotland to explain what they mean by more of a public sector model. You just can't say that and walk away from it. So it'll be interesting to find out.
I mean, is this capitalism with no risk?
That's exactly what it is.
I would love that model.
That's exactly what
it doesn't work.
No, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So give you a wee bit of good news.
Uh-huh.
We have mentioned in the last few weeks that interest rates would probably go down.
Yeah.
And they have done, so down to 4.25%. And with all the indicators, especially what's going on in the States, tariffs, all that kind of stuff, that are going to go down even further. In fact, I seen somebody from the ECB today saying there's a good chance that interest rates would, over the next 4 get-togethers with the bank, they could go down as low as 2.75%.
Wow. So I didn't see it going down as far as that, but let's just recap for the listeners and the viewers. We're at 4.5, we're now at 4.25. So that's welcome, because if you're a business borrowing money, your rate goes down. If you're a mortgage holder, your rate goes down and you get more money to spend in the economy and the multiplier effect of that.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting about it, Willie, is Andrew Bailey, who's not one of the best people we believe about running the Bank of England, has said he's cautious about further cuts. I suppose that's his job. But the traders who make their money betting basically on interest rates are pricing in 2 further cuts.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting. Of the members who voted, 2 members wanted to cut it to 4%.
Yes.
And 2 members wanted to stay at 4.5%.
Yes.
But the consensus was to cut it there. So I think what those who wanted it to stay, they're worried about inflation. They're worried the national insurance kicks in and that pushes inflation up. They're worried about tariffs. But on the one hand, they're worried about these things, but on the other hand, they need to keep the economy stimulated. So it's a real, as ever.
You would say and agree, we've been very critical of the UK government over the past few months, but the indicators for growth seem to be going in the right way. Like, low inflation, low interest rates. These are all the recipe for to uplift the GDP.
Yep.
So maybe there's green shoots for the plan, and maybe it doesn't look as mad as we all thought. I hope that is the case, but the proof will be in the pudding. And it looks like, obviously, we're going to talk about it, but the tariff news this week, so it doesn't look as if it's going to affect the UK as much as we thought. Some commentators are saying that we're jumping in with America, and we're leaving Europe behind. I don't think that is the case, because it's still our biggest trading partner. So, but it'd be interesting to see now. So the further indicators now would be unemployment.
Yep.
right? And I'm saying that I think there's going to be bad numbers in unemployment.
Okay.
I hope I'm wrong in that.
I hope you're wrong.
But if all of these indicators come along, maybe there is green shoots and method behind the madness of Rachel from accounts.
Right. Okay. Well, listen, we all hope so,
Yeah.
because we need a bit of good news.
Mm-hmm.
And last night, seemingly, Donald Trump phoned Keir Starmer when he was watching Arsenal. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. And said, "Oh, we're getting a deal." So the devil is in the detail, Willie, as we all know. So I think the optics of it were very good, and they're in the Oval Office, and the Prince of Darkness, Lord Mandelson's smiling on the shoulder.
Or as we say, hanging about like a bad smell.
He's hanging about there. But I must say, Peter Mandelson's worked some magic in there. But Donald is lavishing praise on Sir Keir. He's lavishing praise on the UK. So the optics are good.
Yes.
But here's a wee thing for me. The UK is in a worse position than it was before Donald Trump became the president again.
Yes.
He is a good negotiator. He's a lot of things, but I think he's a good negotiator. He's pushed all the tariffs up, and then that's a starting point. So anything that comes back, oh, what a great deal we've got.
Yeah.
No, we're in a worse position than we were before he started.
Absolutely.
So what do you think, Willie?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, it doesn't take a lot of brain power to work on that basis when you're negotiating, right? So I'd like to see more cleverer ways of negotiating good deals than just let's give you the worst news you can and work back. And you're right that we're jumping about saying it's great, it's only a 10% tariff when weeks ago it was 0, right? But I think that it's got to be good news. I think the devil will be in the detail when you see what it means from imports now, especially from food from America. I want to see what the farmers are saying, right?
Yeah.
Especially, the chlorinated chicken, all of that kind of stuff. All the
I don't
things.
think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think they opened it up for American beef, but not stuff that's been modified. But it also, the reciprocal was we've opened up for British beef.
Yeah.
And the good news was on cars.
Yeah.
And steel.
Yeah.
And aircraft as well. Straight away, British Airways said they would buy Boeing aircraft, as well as Airbus. Airbus being European, Boeing being American. And they'd said, well, we can't buy a Boeing, but now they can. Yeah. But I thought it was a well-managed optics. And, I actually watched it. And Donald Trump's there saying, "Take it away, Prime Minister." Yeah. That was how he introduced him.
Forever the showman.
Forever the showman, Willie. Now, can I stick with America just for a second? Because a couple of big names in America, all of my heroes together. So we've got Bill Gates, we've got Warren Buffett, and we've got Elon Musk.
Yes.
So first of all, let's deal with Bill Gates. So Bill Gates, as you know, was the richest man in the world before he gave away $100 billion. These numbers are incredible. And he's actually said, and I was there a couple of years ago, a thing called the Giving Pledge that myself and Marion have signed. And he said that he would be spending the money in the charity and then close the charity. He didn't want it going on beyond his time. So he's now put a time on it of 2045. Yeah. He'll be 90. And he said in the next 20 years, he'll be 70 this year, he's going to invest another $200 billion trying to eradicate polio, malaria, find a cure for HIV, and bring down half the rates of child mortality. Yeah. So, I mean, a real hero in my book. But he had a go at Elon. Yes. He said, and he didn't hold back, he said, Elon Musk is killing children by cutting the aid. And he called him out. He said, Elon Musk got mixed up. There's a place in Mozambique called Gaza, which USAID was helping. Yeah. And Elon and his team went, we're not sending aid to Gaza. Yeah. But they got the wrong Gaza. I mean, holy goodness. So he said, Elon, you're killing children by cutting the aid.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a big moment, Willie.
Oh, I don't think there was any thought whatsoever to, obviously, the consequences of cutting the aid, especially to countries in Africa where people were dying every single day. I seen someone from UNICEF talking about it that day, and they'd done a small program saying, here is the effect of the cuts on the ground, and it was horrific, absolutely horrific. And I don't think anyone back in the States had seen the fallout of what was going to happen with us. And it's good to see then that he's taking a step back a wee bit from Dodge.
He is. He is. So, I think it also shows you how hard it is to get these savings in government, and we'll maybe talk about that next week.
Yeah.
Because even with Elon saying there's trillions of waste, we've yet to see what has been the outcome of his look at government.
Yeah.
So here's to my other hero, Warren Buffett. So he's stepping down at 94, Willie. Yeah. Is that a model for you, do you think?
Well, before his time was out, you know what I mean? That's a bit, he's never even seen his apprenticeship through.
So, and he seemed to spring a surprise on his board. He invites people to Omaha, Nebraska. He's known as the Sage of Omaha.
Sage of Omaha, yeah.
And 40,000 people travelled to Omaha. It's called the Woodstock of capitalism.
Yeah.
And him and Charlie Munger, who's no longer with us,
passed away, yeah.
They espouse their wonderful monbots of wisdom, I would say.
Yeah.
Now, Warren Buffett, even though he's one of the world's richest man, about 150 billion, I mean, these numbers personal, and that's after he's given away tens of billions, hundreds of billions to charity, because he gave a lot of money to Bill Gates.
That's right, when he set up the foundation, yeah.
He still lives in the same house he lived in 65 years ago.
Amazing.
And he still drives the same old car. He eats burgers and drinks Coke.
Cherry Coke.
You've got to love that.
Yeah.
And since 1964, Willie, as I think I said, I make my team read Warren Buffett's letters to his shareholders. They are brilliant. So since 1964, he has returned 5.5 million%.
My God.
So, and I might get this wrong, but I think if you put $5,000 in, he would have returned you 500 million. You didn't need to work, Willie.
Right.
And I just want to leave this wee segment on Warren by, he always had these brilliant quotes. He took very complex, investing is complex, but he just made it seem simple. So here's a few of his brilliant quotes. So the first one is, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful.
Yes.
It takes guts to do that.
Yeah.
And then another one, which I certainly live by, it's far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price. It just sums it up, doesn't it? And the last one, which you and I love, it's only when the tide goes out you learn who's been swimming naked. That's about who's got all the debt.
You know the thing I loved about him when I watched all the early programs and I read the books? I loved the way that investing in Berkshire Hathaway was like being part of a cult.
A cult?
Because he managed to convince the people always to leave their money in. Right? It was all about capital appreciation.
Over the years.
So I think they hardly paid dividends. That's why they always had so much money. And that is why that he could be greedy when people were fearful. And what he was brilliant at, he understood compound interest better than anybody, right? And I think to do that, and he was always buying into cash businesses. Cash was everything. And you say, like, buy a good business and pay a fair price rather than try to steal businesses. And what I love is that, and I love him for this more than anything, he said that venture capitalism was a scam. It was the greatest scam ever. So all these big VC companies and PE companies, Warren says, don't touch them because they're a scam. So I'm going to give him credit for that. So now that Charlie Munger and Warren and Bill Gates will now be known as the Holy Trinity.
Well, I hold them in high esteem. I think probably Elon, I still think he's a genius, but I don't hold him in quite. I mean, you'll say it. I tell you that, Tam, and you're probably right.
I'm not changing my mind. I'm just saying he's a flawed genius, right? And somebody who'd get carried away. He wouldn't be like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and keep their feet in the ground. I think he get carried away with fame. But also, I think that there's a good point on this when you talk about what they're doing. When people now talk about let's tax the rich and feed the poor, here's the richest people in the world giving everything away, right? But what they're doing is they're making sure that it goes to, rather than giving it to the government, you think it's going to be wasted, they are picking specific topics like medicine and AIDS and all these things that, you know, malaria, all the things that Bill Gates has been doing for years and years. So I would just say, for the people who think that, oh, you know, the rich are this and that, there's a stigma, these people who we've just been talking about have put more back into society than they have taken out.
Oh, goodness. And I was over in Edinburgh this week at the Carnegie Medal ceremony. So this is Andrew Carnegie. The Carnegie Corporation of New York give a philanthropy medal.
Yes.
And it was a brilliant ceremony, and it was mainly Americans coming over, and the stories are just incredible how these people, and it was in Edinburgh, the sun was shining, we were in the Signet Library, which I'd never been in before, an amazing building, the writers to the Signet, and Bill Gates actually quoted Andrew Carnegie, and he said, "The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced, and I'm not going to do that." And neither am I.
Aye. Well, there's no chance of me doing that anyway, right? but what I would say on that is, was that at the ceremony where Lenny Henry and Richard Curtis got a Nobel Award for?
So I gave it to them.
Yeah, amazing.
So that's for comic relief.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know you.
No. So Richard Curtis and Lenny Henry came up to Edinburgh. Lenny had a kilt on.
Aye.
He was full kilted up. He looked resplendent. And I had been working with Richard in Make Poverty History and Live 8 as well, and Comic Relief. And Comic Relief just started out as, how do we raise money and have fun? And it's raised over £1 billion now.
Amazing.
So Richard and Lenny come up, and it was just a wonderful ceremony.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Another company you're always waxing lyrical about, Next, showed fantastic profits, heading over £1 billion again.
Yeah, Lord. Now, what is it? Lord Apsley, is it? I wasn't the name wrong.
No, I just call him Lord Wolfson.
Yeah, of Apsley Guys.
Yes,
that's
of
what
Apsley Guys. Yes,
you're Lord Haughey of Hutchison Town, and so I think Apsley Guys is probably a bit more posher than Hutchison. But yes, I think he's one of the best CEOs in the world, and I think Nix is one of the best managed companies, and I always read it because it's a barometer for what's happening. And as you say, it's not quite as bad maybe as a lot of people were thinking. And if we've cut interest rates, people got a wee bit more money in their pocket. If we can just get through this now, Willie, maybe there are some green shoots.
Yeah. Wee bit of bad news, we're losing another 250 jobs in the oil sector in Aberdeen again, on top of 350 earlier. But if you look at that and say, right, this is bad news, but the good news is, in the same week, we announced that 600 million, to Scottish Power to move towards what we're talking about, clean energy.
That's right.
Right, so which is good news, and hopefully that some of the people losing their jobs can find somewhere in this transition for new jobs, especially if they're technical, if it's engineering jobs. But I think, again, I don't want to wrap that bad news up in with a bit of good news, because the good news, I think, is fantastic. This investment by the UK Wealth Fund into Scottish Power, some of it alone, some of it in spending their own money, they're matching it. So I think that the faster that we can move on this, because as we've said before, if you want to get the people happy, which they're not at the moment, we have to help them with the cost of living crisis. And there's no doubt that getting towards clean energy and driving people's energy bills down will go a long way of making them a bit happier than they are at the moment.
Yeah, I still think Westminster and Holyrood have got it wrong in the North Sea. I think we still need hydrocarbons, and if we cut them off today, we lose jobs.
Yeah.
And we have to import the hydrocarbons from somewhere else. It doesn't make sense to me. But let's finish this wee section on a thank you to Cape Forbes.
Yeah.
So Cape Forbes and the programme of government that John Swinney announced this week announced 1.2 million for Scottish Edge, which you support and I support. And it's been a long time coming, but thank you, Deputy First Minister.
Well done. Great news. Great news for young budding entrepreneurs. Brilliant.
The Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.
Tom, not a fabulous guest this week.
Fabulous.
We've got Neil Lapping, who's the founder and CEO of Mac Ventures. Welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks, guys.
Nice to see you. And of course, you and I know each other because you've been through our Scale Up program.
The fantastic scale-up program.
And I hope you're going to attribute the Scale Up program to all your success.
Every single bit.
I think we need to change the rules, guys. We need to get guests on he's never met.
I don't know most of them, but Neil's a good guy. He's a good guy.
Neil, tell us your story.
So, Mac's Adventure started, I guess, go back a little bit.
Yeah.
I was...
Scottish accent.
It's not a Scottish accent, but it's a Scottish heritage.
Right.
My great-grandfather was born in Glasgow,
Right.
within a mile or two of where we are sitting
Yeah,
now.
right, brilliant.
Grandfather was a proud Scotsman, fought in the Transvaal Scottish. I went to a Scottish school in Grahamstown in the Eastern Cape of South Africa.
Yeah.
Wore the kilt. We had a pipe band.
So there's a Scottish school there.
A Scottish school called St Andrews. St Andrews College, Grahamstown.
Wow.
The badge with a salter.
I didn't know that, right?
And if you'd told me I was ever going to live in Scotland, I would have said there was something wrong with you. I mean, never in a million years did I think. I went from Cape Town to London, lasted 3 months there, and I spent 5 years traveling. I used to teach sailing, windsurfing, water skiing in the Mediterranean.
Wow.
I would travel until my money ran out. I spent a year traveling Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the US. My mother was going demented. She's like, I paid for your education, your university. When are you going to travel? I was now 27. Fell in love with a Scottish girl, ended up in Ullapool in the far northwest of Scotland. And there was zero chance I was going to be a water sports instructor
At Ullapool.
on the west coast of
A
Scotland.
bit cold.
You could have been running the RNLI up there right now.
You'd be busy.
It's a lovely place, Ullapool, though.
That's amazing.
I used to go
Fantastic.
to the music festival, Loopaloo.
At the Cayley.
Yeah, some great nights up in Ullapool.
Fantastic place. And anyway, I was sitting there, I was dead broke, had £6,000 of credit card debt, was working 2 jobs.
So what age were you?
27.
27.
Yeah.
Took me a while.
Right.
And I'd have all these incredible experiences in New Zealand, Australia. And the weather in the South Island of New Zealand is worse than the weather on the west coast of Scotland.
Oh,
it is dreadful.
Right.
And all these people are just like, but you have the most amazing experiences. You're hiking, you're going on glaciers, you're helicoptering. I turned up in Ullapool, and every single person coming through Ullapool was seeing Scotland through the window of a bus. Normally the rain-soaked window of a bus. And I was just like, this is not the way to experience a place, let alone Scotland. You know, Scotland has, as a destination, it just has the most incredible layers. It's like, multi-plot-lined film. It's got people and culture and food and history and landscape.
Love
But
it.
everyone's like experiencing it through the same car park, where the bus drops them off, they take a selfie, they get back on the bus. So with and it also helps that I was totally unemployable. Like literally,
I would agree with that.
yep, you know me well. So I, totally unemployable. There's not much call for kind of water sports instructors on the West Coast. So I had this idea that I was going to start a adventure holiday company aimed at backpackers. Worst idea ever. Shortly afterwards, the girlfriend from Ullapool fell out of love with me. I ended up in Glasgow. Best thing ever. And with no money, no idea, I started this business to run hiking trips for backpackers. Total disaster. And went back to work in an outdoor shop. Thankfully, the best thing about working in that outdoor shop is that's where my wife came in to buy a backpack. She left me with her number and a backpack. And 20 years later, we're
Wow.
married with kids. So
Fantastic.
great thing the business didn't work instantly, because otherwise I wouldn't be married. And anyway, but the business was super small for the first 10 years. And basically what we did, we ran walking trips, biking trips for people in Scotland. And then when someone phoned us up and says, do you do trips in England? We'd be like, well, we do now. And then someone phoned us up and said, oh, we really fancy going on a trip in Tuscany. Well, do you do anything now? Yeah, we do now. But the best thing about
Great
it,
entrepreneur, that.
yeah, it's customer led. That's what I call it,
Yes.
according to the thing. But it took 10 years to get to 10 people. But during those 10 years, like 10 colleagues, I spent thousands and thousands of hours walking, hiking, biking with customers.
Right.
Sometimes it was top
And
of
you were
bed,
listening.
listening. And,
And
it's like
learning.
all over the world, chatting, and sometimes, you learn a lot about people when it's -30 wind chill on the top of Ben Nevis in a whiteout,
Yeah.
and everyone's goggles are freezing off, and someone's just dropped their glove, which went down a cliff. So it was a great, great apprenticeship. And the good thing is, my now wife had a really good job, so I didn't have to make any money for a very long time.
Well, it's the same. Lived off his wife.
Yeah.
These days. That's
Exactly.
Same thing.
So it was fantastic. And then, the best thing that happened to me is I got a great couple of mentors in that kind of, 8-10 years in.
Right.
Initially, a guy called Bruce Petrie, who, was a super guy local.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years later, a travel industry guy who'd been there, done it, built an amazing business. He had actually built a company called Eurocamp, a guy called Richard Atkinson.
Yep.
Amazing. And this mentorship just rocket fueled.
Right.
Right place, right time, knew the customers, knew the market, suddenly had an advisor who knew what I was doing. And, we had gone, we were about 10 people, about 3 million revenue. 2019, we were over 100 colleagues, about just under 30 million revenue, about 30,000 customers a year, sending people to the, Scotland, the UK, Europe, great feedback, great business. But, in hindsight, we probably run a bit fast, outgrown a lot of the systems, people, process, culture. So the world kindly gave me a great gift, which was COVID. And
COVID was a gift.
a gift in with a lot of hindsight. With a lot of
At the
hindsight.
time, you didn't think so.
It was a disaster at the time. We have customers from 50 countries. We go to 50 countries. No one can travel anywhere. Revenue created.
Wow.
90% reduction in revenue. Total disaster, losing money hand over fist, sadly having to let people go, disappointing people. But what was super interesting is that I actually live in Mulgai, right, just close to the start of the West Island Way. The one thing you could do was go for your daily walk. And almost every day, myself and my family went for a wee walk on the West Island Way. And it was about this time of year, sun was shining, bluebells are out. And, suddenly I'm used to seeing my customers every day. I go to work, I go to the station, and I was like, I really miss this. This is my purpose in life, is connecting all these, when they're in Mulgai, they're still loving the West Island Way. They're still
Let's just
enthusiastic. They've got a smile, even if it's raining. It's only been raining for half an hour by the time they come past me. So they're all, and I was like, I really love what I do. And off the back of that, near-death experience, where we had this opportunity to completely rebuild our business.
So did it get near death, Neil?
Yes.
Yes.
We lost, we're not a big business. We lost over £3 million in 2020.
Wow.
And yeah, we'd been cautious and been careful. I think we probably could have survived. But the problem is that someone actually approached us to invest or buy us. And what it did is it made us do a whole bunch of modeling, because I never thought that far ahead. We probably could have survived, but we couldn't run a growth business.
Okay.
So, it would have been kind of, are we going to survive? Are we just scraping? And I love growing a business. I love, there are four main reasons I love growing a business. Is that when I was a guide on Ben Nevis, I could impact 4 to 6 people a day. Now we have thousands of people, our customers, we have thousands of people on trip every day. It's amazing. They are having the most amazing experiences. They're connecting with new people, their family, their friends. This is the thing we live for. We live for our holidays. And instead of impacting 4 or 6 people, I can impact thousands of people.
Wow.
I can create opportunity for the people who've been with us for 10, 15 years, growing with the business. If you're not growing a business, it's difficult to create opportunities, create jobs, create development. But the impact we have on 90% of our trips, people are staying in local small communities. So, we look at, we work with kind of 90% of our suppliers are micro businesses. They're B&Bs, taxi guys, baggage transfer, bike hire.
Right.
The business we put into these guys makes their business viable. It makes their community viable.
Yeah.
If we put 2, 3, 4,000 bed nights into Kinloch Leven, it keeps the pub open, the post office open, the school open.
I'd never thought of it that way.
That's otherwise people just stay in Glasgow, Fort William, Inverness,
Measure what your impact is, the GDP of that small town.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is deeply rewarding when you've worked with those same suppliers for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
They've seen you where you were a clueless 27-year-old with no idea. They looked after you, and now their kids are running the business. It's amazing. So, and then customers, colleagues, community, and then it's great to be able to. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm competitive. I want to run a great business that creates value. So out of COVID, I had the good fortune of we ended up raising money from a really successful entrepreneur. I'd met him. Life's funny. I'd met him, friend of a friend, on a hiking trip out of Ullapool.
Really? Wow.
About 2 years before Ullapool. I hadn't been back to Ullapool in 20 years. Simon ended up investing in the business, and I think if Simon fell, he's actually from Cambridge, but I think if he fell in the Clyde, he'd come up with a salmon in his mouth. Literally the day that money landed, travel came back, it went crazy, and since then, we're kind of just over 50 million in revenue, just
50 million.
Just under 200 colleagues, more than double the size we were pre the pandemic. But
you're obviously still enjoying it,
most days, Tom.
I mean, what struck me about your story coming through the Scale Up program was there's some big headwinds has happened in most entrepreneurs' stories, Willie. But you're talking about COVID as a real opportunity, and that's the mindset we need. It's either an opportunity or a threat. So what is entrepreneurs going to do about it? We're going to treat it as an opportunity. Because if you treat it as a threat and, oh my God, what are we going to do? That's what's going to happen. Whereas you were always going, I'm so pleased that COVID came along and we lost 3 million. And I'm going, this guy's nuts.
I think I'm a masochist.
I'm sure you weren't pleased at the time.
I was not pleased at the time. But the thing, I am great in a crisis. I love a good crisis. And I think I'm one of those entrepreneurs that sometimes creates the crisis.
Yes. I know quite a few like that, Willie.
I like a crisis because you've got this clarity of vision. We've got to beat the opposition. We've got to survive. We've got to deal with this. It's energy. Everyone's in the room. It's aligned. We're not worried about, what's in the company fruit bowl this week, and it doesn't meet my expectations. So I love a crisis, but I think sometimes as you scale, that can be quite difficult because, it's trying to get a lot more. You've got to be a bit slower. You've got to get everyone aligned around you and things like that. I'm a masochist.
So Neil, for the listeners and the viewers, what's the kind of lessons you've learned? Where's the nuggets in there? Because everybody's trying to learn from other entrepreneurs. That's why we do the Scale Up program. But what are your kind of nuggets you would say to others who are aspiring and trying to grow?
I think the first thing, and recently we've lost focus on this a little bit, is just obsessing about our customers. Like it helps that I'm my own customer.
Right.
You know, we do these trips, my poor children get dragged on them.
Right.
You know, this is what I do of a weekend, of an evening. So, but like just being obsessive about our customer. We have this idea of like, my parents do my trips as well. And it's like, would this be good enough for Neil's mom? You know, that's the test.
Standard.
Would you book this hotel for Neil's mom? You know, would you, if Neil's mom phoned up with a problem, how would she feel when? And I think this obsession about your customer, and, you know, to be honest, over the last year, we've had all these kind of internal scaling problems, be too inwardly focused. And actually, every time I speak to a customer, I'm like, that's where the secret sauce is.
Right.
That's what, so I think really obsessing about the customer. I think the second thing is, you know, the thing that has just transformed the business journey is mentors and coaches.
Right.
You know, and I think approaching mentors and coaches with a massive learning and growth mindset.
Yeah.
You know, I feel I've been doing this for 22 years, and I feel like I'm still on a vertical learning curve. And the best single, and I consume podcasts, books, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the single biggest thing is having great mentors. You know, people who are further on in their career and up their success ladder, who are giving back, you know, who are that guidance you can get. This accelerated learning is just off the scale.
And any tips in finding them?
Just ask.
Yeah.
You know, people are so shy of coming forward, you know. It's like, and if you don't, you know, if they ask and say, I'll come back to you, like ask again and again. I think there's so many amazing people out there. And I think it's not like, oh, one mentor forever. I've had, you know, different people at different stages of the business. And, you know, most people really want young entrepreneurs to be successful. Not young entrepreneurs, but just people in business.
Yeah.
You know, you know, even if you're in an organization, where can you learn? Who are the other people that might be able to help you? Because generally, I don't know about you, but people are nice.
No.
The ones are, they want to be helpful.
Yeah.
So,
And what do you think? Obviously, because of COVID, you've been here, down there, whatever. And I hope that people don't take from this learning as try and enjoy a crisis. Right. But I mean, obviously, you have seen a great, you know, implosion in the business, right? You've grown very quickly. COVID comes along, you're hitting the depths, and then right away, now you've seen the learning from that. And we've been saying for years and years and years that how important mentoring is, right? You can't buy it. And obviously, we've also been saying that the customer is king. It's a kind of unique sector that you're in. How do you find good colleagues?
we start by looking for values and like do they share our values?
Yeah.
And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but like, are they the type of people that you want to go on a bike ride with? You know,
Like your mum would be happy with.
yeah, you know, that your mom would approve of you bringing home, you know. So I think, you know, it's just that, and that's why, to be honest, Glasgow's been a great base for us.
Wow.
Because it's just, you know, we're not pulling people in because they're travel experts or, you know, there's a few, you know, travel companies in Glasgow, but it's not like, oh, we're looking because you've got this domain expertise. We're just looking for people who actually, you know, want to work hard, do well for their families, learn, grow, got a sense of humor, open, you know, honest. I think I lived in the south of England for on and off, you know, in my early 20s, you know, doing jobs, everything from washing dishes to running nightclubs. And no one talks to you in the supermarket queue in the south of England.
Yeah.
No.
As soon as I moved to Glasgow, you know, people talk to you in the supermarket queue.
They're
And
nice people.
you've got this openness and honesty. And I think, you know, that's been why it's been great to build. We have colleagues, you know, all over the UK and across Germany and the US now. But fundamentally, you know, looking for people who share your values and like, actually, this is someone I'd like to spend time with. And do they have potential and ambition and want to grow and learn? And then the most frustrating thing I find, to be honest, is people don't realize how amazing they are and the potential they have. It's just incredible. You get these, you know, people who come in and they're like, oh, you know, I can only do this. It's like, no, you can't. It doesn't matter what school you went to, what, you know, upbringing you had, what university degree, it doesn't make any difference. What really makes a difference is just being surrounded by good people, willing to learn, work hard. And, so there's no secret sauce. Believe me, I found some bad ones.
Yes.
Too.
Yeah.
I found
Yeah.
I found a few bad ones on the way, but on the whole, the kind of the potential of people is incredible. And, that's why, being, as someone who moved to Glasgow and to Scotland, has been a great place to build a business.
So in the last 60 seconds, give your business a plug.
Was it this camera?
That camera.
That camera. So if you're looking to really connect with your friends and family and get out there and spend amazing time together, we run about 200 amazing trips, from everything from starting from the West End away just outside Glasgow to walking on the Tour de Mont Blanc, and we take care of everything.
Yeah.
Planning the trip, booking the accommodation, moving your bags, and looking after you if anything goes wrong. So give us a shout. We're maxadventure.com. You'll find us there. And it's just a fantastic way to spend time together.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
The Go Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.
Tom, I've got our old pal back.
Positive
Patrick. No, positive. All right.
Positive Patrick, Willie. Come on.
Well, I hope he's going to be positive Patrick this week. Stuart, great to have you back on. We've missed you. Give us a wee update on what's happening in the city.
Thanks. Now, Stuart, before you start, the sun is shining,
Yeah.
the taps are off, you better be positive.
I think there's a fair amount to be positive about. Yeah.
Good.
You're in good luck, I think, today. I think.
Good.
Because it has been a very busy month for us at the Chamber. No surprises that international trade has been the priority.
Okay.
Our governing council agreed a position on free trade and tariffs, endorsing the work of the British Chambers of Commerce, who've been very active on trade issues with government ministers and officials. We've been urging the UK government not to retaliate against US trade tariffs, but instead to put in the hard work negotiating. The British Chambers of Commerce members' polling showed that the vast majority were looking for the UK government to juggle negotiations in 3 trading blocs: the US, the EU, and markets in the Asia Pacific, building, for example, on the progress that had been made with the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Wow. That's about...
Wow. Stuart, I remember back in the day when we announced a big deal with the East when we'd done a deal with Edinburgh.
The CPTPP. You need to practice
Wow.
that.
There you go.
Will you?
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah, we joined that, UK joined that in December last year, and given that it's mostly Asian countries, it's quite an interesting move that was made. In the last week, you'd have to say that the UK government has been doing exactly what the members have been asking for.
Great.
The announcement on Tuesday of a free trade agreement with India, followed on Thursday by the framework agreement with the US. It may not satisfy every member, but the direction of travel is the right one.
So India was good for the whiskey?
And gin,
And
and
sector.
salmon,
Right.
a whole range of food and drink sectors that did well out of that.
Yeah.
Certainly in Glasgow, we're very pleased to see the enormous tariffs on whiskey and gin cut in half in India, with further cuts scheduled over time. India is a big opportunity. It's currently the UK's 11th largest trading partner, with
right.
total bilateral trade of 42 billion, of which 17 billion is currently UK exports into India. Also, the cuts in the tariff rates in the US for cars, steel, aerospace, and we hope preferential rates on medical and pharmaceutical products,
Still to be seen.
still to be seen, will all be welcomed by Glasgow companies involved in the supply chains for those sectors.
Sure.
We had a delegation of local businesses in New York during Liberation Day, and it was helpful to hear US businesses' views on tariffs. Pretty universally negative. And we're all therefore hoping that Lord Mandelson is right and that there is more to come in the UK-US trading
The Prince of
relationship.
Darkness.
Yeah, he's still got a bit of magic to spread across that relationship. Next up for the Chamber Trade team is the China International Technology Fair in Shanghai in June,
Right.
where Glasgow will have privileged status as the official guest city.
Wow.
That offers an unusual level of access for companies that join us on the mission. China is our 5th largest trading partner with nearly £30 billion worth of exports, and so we're keen to hear from companies in sectors like advanced manufacturing, biomedical sciences, green energy and AI who see China as an important opportunity. And we're also delighted to see the investment plans announced by the new owners at Glasgow Airport. Alliance confirmed they're going to be spending £350 million on the 3 UK airports in their portfolio. That's Aberdeen, Glasgow and Southampton, but with a lion's share going to Glasgow. Improvements in the airport terminal will be very welcome, and we'll be working with the Glasgow team at the airport using the Alliance commitment to attract in the new direct routes that we've all been looking for in the US, Europe and Asia in the coming weeks and months. Well, it was good to hear. It was actually good to hear what Can Jan-Du, who's the new CEO, was saying, because he was pretty explicit about his aims. He wanted to expand back into the double daily in Dubai. He's targeting Copenhagen, Berlin, Madrid, Milan, as well as US routes.
That's great.
And he wants to embed regularity with the existing hubs at Amsterdam, Paris and Frankfurt. These are obviously all going to help us to expand the trading links.
People doing business need to go from Glasgow as well as Edinburgh, obviously.
Yeah, indeed so. But we're also glad to see that the Scottish Government increased resources that they've allocated in their programme for government to help SMEs to grow their exports, with a special emphasis on exactly the kind of trade missions that we run at the Chamber.
So they've been listening to you, Stuart?
It would appear so. I have to say the Scottish Chambers of Commerce has actually done a really good job in establishing a pretty solid track record in that kind of work. Talking programme for government, perhaps closer to home, just a little bit of enthusiasm around the abolition of peak fares. That may have some impact on perhaps boosting footfall in the city centre, which is something we're still really focused on.
Yep.
You'll have seen the regeneration of George Square has now begun. The hoardings are up. The statues are due to be moved into storage from next week. And we are also, as far as city centre investments concerned, keenly waiting to see the final outcome of the housing bill, to see if new build-to-rent projects will be properly exempted from.
I hope they've listened to Willie in this one.
Absolutely. I mean, that could release hundreds of millions of pounds worth of investment into the repurposing of buildings in the city centre.
I think billions.
Billions.
If we get that right, Willie, because we talked about it in previous weeks, Stuart, and when people are investing, especially in the build-to-rent sector, they're investing for 30, 40 years. They need to know what's happening. And I know a lot of people are in the sidelines saying, we don't touch Scotland because the policy's all over the place. Once we know what the policy is and we can understand our capital allocation to this, we'll do it. But so far, no.
And we had a wee tremor this week, one of the Holyrood committees suggesting that perhaps student accommodation should be captured in the housing bill for rent controls as well. And you can imagine the tremors that were going round the market hearing this. A motion was passed to include student accommodation. We are hoping that that will be taken out again.
This is where we've been talking about weeks and weeks about paying more and getting cleverer politicians. This is another example of people throwing out a line. Right, I'll give you a perfect example. I don't know if this has been brought to your attention yet. Apart from the Chamber, we see as you're our conduit to the council, right? And I'd love to, I'll have a bet just now that they have to go back on their new fines for parking on the pavement, causing absolute mayhem all over the city.
I don't know about that.
So at a time when you've got no money, you get these civil servants around and say, how can we get more money? What about we make out that women with prams and wheelchairs can't get by cars that are up in the pavement? So let's put a tax on everybody that parks in the pavement.
Is this what it's come to?
That's what they're doing. That's right. So here's what's happened. Mayhem. Buses now can't get up streets in Kings Park. Everywhere you go, there is, I don't know if you've noticed now, right? But everywhere you go now, traffic seems to have got worse. Right, and it's all because you're not getting the flow So I will guarantee you it's going to come to a head. Bus companies, other people are going to say, hold on a minute, this is bonkers. Because we know that most of the new estates that were built after the war weren't built so you could have two cars parked in the street, right? Cars now cannot go up Curtis Avenue. Buses can't go up Curtis Avenue. So everybody, I can guarantee you that this is honest feedback you can take back saying it might have been a good idea, right, to raise funds, but it's bringing the city to its knees.
I'm going to have to say that's a Holyrood initiative. That was a bill passed in Edinburgh.
But it was first muted in local authorities.
Well, that's fair.
They need the Holyrood to change the law. But I all started thinking, well, I'm not going to blame Glasgow, but Glasgow were shouting the loudest about it.
Boys, who cares where it comes from? It's madness.
Aye. Well,
let's move the debate up.
You're hitting that.
Oh my God!
You're hitting a red button for me there, because it's not just the
where you live.
Payments where I live. It's now they've changed the parking permits, or they are changing the parking permits from a standard rate to one based on the carbon emissions of your car. And they'll charge an extra if you happen to have more than one car in your house.
So here's what they're doing. Sure, it's a really good point, right? So they started off a few years ago when we started talking about ESG, right? About all these initiatives were going to give you more, your tax will be less, this will be great. The reason why people are not buying electric cars now, they're taking them all away.
Yeah.
Right, that's it. And it's worse than that, they're changing the rules. So we're never going to get to carbon zero when you keep mucking about with the regulation. So, sorry.
And as it happens, finally from me, actually, and this is next week, actually, as it happens to be Glasgow Climate Week.
Right.
And as a chamber, we're contributing a programme of events, including our Congress of Business conference on Tuesday, the 13th. We're expecting about 400 delegates to engage with a variety of speakers like Andy Haldane, Martha Lane Fox,
All right. Very good.
Norbury, who's the CEO of Eon UK, Anton Muscatelli, a whole range of many others. This is our annual event to explore business progress in meeting the climate change challenge.
Good.
It's free. There's still plenty of time to register through the chamber website, so we're hoping that we'll see the local business.
So when is it
coming along?
Stuart?
It's
See it to that camera.
It's the 13th of May, Tuesday, at the SWG3. Have a look at the chamber website.
And Stuart, I would love the guys there to discuss what we've tried and didn't work.
Yeah.
Right? So as we can don't dwell on it, but just say, look, here's when we rushed. DRS, all of this kind of stuff, the circular economy, it took 1,800 people to make this t-shirt, right, okay. So let's focus in on the things where we can really make a difference that are tangible, right. I'm working with people this week to try and we're working with houses where we've nearly got them to zero bills for electricity.
Wow.
Right, nearly zero. We're working along with some of the big providers of utilities, and we don't think we're that far away. These are the sort of things.
That's where we should be debating.
Correct.
Not charging people for
bringing back plastic bottles.
the
Does it count?
pavement.
Was that 300 million you think we've wasted? Stuart, that was a brilliant and comprehensive roundup from what's going on at the chamber. Great to have you back. We can't wait till you're back on again next month.
Oh,
You
it's a
can come
pleasure.
back, Stuart.
Oh, that's good.
You are welcome
I'm
anytime.
glad, relieved.
Tom, not a great show.
I love the show.
Brilliant. In the sunshine. In the sunshine and the gorbles.
You can see the sweat coming off my head.
Yeah. For all our listeners and viewers, I want to tell them that next week we'll be having a special show all about something we've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks, the Singapore model. So watch this space. Don't miss it. It will be fascinating.
Thanks, Willie. Yep. The Hunter Foundation has commissioned Oxford Economics to look at what Scotland can learn from Singapore, and it is quite astonishing. So let's hope the government's
Go
listening.
Radio Business Show with Hunter and Haughey. Hit subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and never miss an episode.